You're listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brenna Hicks, the Kid Counselor. This is the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast, where I give you insight, awareness, and enlightenment about your parenting and your relationship with your kids. In today's episode, we are continuing with the parent companion to play therapy, and we're going to pivot a smidge. I've been talking a lot about what happens in the playroom with the therapist in child-centered play therapy. So there's been a lot of very technical and clinical stuff. I want to do a little bit of a pause, if you will, and I want to pivot to something that I think is really important, whether your child's in play therapy or not. I think it's really important to understand what behavior means. And of course, yes, how it applies to child-centered play therapy, but even how it applies to the way that we see it as adults. We've talked a lot about adulthood bias, and I think it's really important that we recognize we view children and their behaviors and their experience through cloudy eyes because we expect kids to think and act and operate like us, and they can't, and they don't, and they won't until they develop abstract reasoning, which is around the age of 13. And therefore, when we look at behavior through an adult, cognitive, rational, reasoning lens, it taints what we see. And one of the really important rules of thumb that we know from the filial training by Landreth and Bratton is we focus on the donut, not the whole. And let me illustrate that point really quickly, and then I'm going to get into the paradigm shift that I'd like us to focus on today. Let's just throw out a story here. So let's say you go to Dunkin' Donuts, and I don't know if you have Dunkin' Donuts where you live. In the States, it's a really popular coffee and donut shop. So if you're international or if you've never heard of Dunkin' Donuts, imagine a local bakery that serves donuts and coffee. All right. So you show up and you go in and you order whatever your favorite donut is. In this particular illustration, it cannot be a filled donut. So please don't tell me, oh, my favorite donut is jelly filled. Okay, that will not work for this illustration. So assume that you get a donut with a hole in it. And it's freshly baked. If you all have Krispy Kreme where you live, when the light's flashing and it's literally like hot, fresh donuts coming right out and they're dumping the glaze on it in front of your eyes on the belt. Okay, all the people in the States know exactly what I mean. Fresh Krispy Kreme donuts, they illuminate the sign to let you know you can go in and they're like hot off the press. All right, so imagine they hand you your donut and it smells good and you know what it's going to taste like and you're already excited. And then all of a sudden it hits you. The baker took a little metal cylinder and stamped out the middle of my donut. I could have had a full circle. They purposefully had a ball of dough that could have been just a solid thing. And they stamped the middle of that out. And now I don't have a hole. I could have had the whole thing. And now there's a part of my donut missing. That would be lunacy. None of us would do that. We would bite in to the circle and we would just be so excited and we would be so thankful that God made donuts and we would go on about our day oohing and awing about how amazing donuts are. But what we often don't realize is we do this with our kids. Instead of seeing the incredible, amazing gift that our children are, and instead of recognizing that they are so special and it's such a blessing to have them in our lives, and we are so grateful for them, we sit there and go, well, if they were more this, well, if they were less that, well, I just really wish that this wasn't the case. And man, that is so irritating. Focus on the donut, not the whole. So here's the paradigm shift. Whether you're pursuing therapy or not, here's what's really important. Our children's behaviors, our children's emotions, the way our children act and operate, it's them trying to tell us what they're experiencing. Often they're trying to show us their pain. Often they're trying to show us their discomfort. They're trying to show us their big feelings that they can't make sense of. They're trying to show you that they're hurt. not physically, usually emotionally. They're trying to show you that they're trying to hide being vulnerable. They're trying to discount something to make them feel better, but they don't feel better. If we recognize behavior as something other than irritating, as something other than troublesome, as something other than frustrating, if we recognize behavior as our children trying to show us what's going on for them, it allows us to focus on the donut, not the hole. It allows us to see the child. That's what child-centered play therapy is. It's unconditional acceptance of any behavior, any emotion, any moment. Why? Because we believe that kids are in the process of becoming. And let's be clear, we're all in the process of becoming. Life is a process of becoming. We're all wired to become better versions of ourselves. And so instead of saying, well, if you could just be less angry, if you could just be more obedient, if you could be more like your brother, oh my gosh, please don't ever say that to your kid. Please do not ever pit your children against each other. If we were to see, wow, they're having a really hard time with this right now, I'm going to reflect their feeling. Oh, they cannot regulate themselves. I need to sit in the pocket of this with them right now. Oh, I didn't think that was a big deal, but they're really upset. It was obviously a really big deal to them. I need to apologize for being dismissive of how much that mattered to them. If we look at our kids' behavior in the lens of they're trying to show us and tell us something, it changes everything. That's why child-centered play therapy is designed the way that it is, because that's exactly what happens in the playroom. We don't see the behavior as anything other than a child's expression. It's their conversation with us. They're not verbal. They're not rational. They're not cognitive. What other option do they have? Their only recourse is to show us what's going on. And if we can make that shift as parents, as adults, it changes the entire dynamic, because all of a sudden we're focusing on the donut, not the hole. And donuts are fantastic. Ironically, as I'm saying this out loud, I read something that they asked 10 dietitians and nutrition experts, like people that literally study food and your body's way of processing nutrients. They polled 10 of the top nutritionists or dietitians or whoever, and they said, what are the top 3 foods that you should never eat? And every single one of them said a donut. So please don't go gorge yourself on donuts, because I was talking about how great they are. That's my public service announcement. Nutritionists and dietitians all around the world do not advise you going and eating donuts. But just follow my theory here, okay? In theory, donuts are fantastic. And we would never sit and lament the fact that the baker cut the middle of the donut out. And see, the clever little baker, that would have been wasted dough, but now they sell them as donut holes. Or if you go to Dunkin' Donuts, munchkins. So, really, this was just smart, very clever. Let's just cut it out and then we'll sell those too. Very entrepreneurial of whoever thought of that. But we're never going to sit there and be angry that someone else bought our donut hole. We're just going to eat the donut. We can't look at our kids and want for something that isn't there when we already have the gift right in front of us. And look, sometimes kids are dysregulated. Sometimes kids are stuck in inappropriate behavior. Sometimes they don't have an emotional vocabulary. Sometimes they don't know how to handle situations. Actually, often to all of those things. But that's appropriate. And it's our job to help them learn the things they need to cope. If they build an emotional vocabulary because we reflect their feelings, if they build self-esteem because we encourage them, if they learn to make decisions and accept consequences because we give them choices, if we unconditionally accept them, they will naturally behave in more self-enhancing ways. The adults in a child's life are very closely tied to the outcome for the child and their behavior. When kids know that people trust them to behave appropriately, when kids know that people trust them to make appropriate decisions, they do. And conversely, if your child believes that everyone expects them to misbehave, they will. I could tell you story after story after story. Literally, I don't have time because this would be an hour-long podcast. But I could tell you story after story where the self-fulfilling prophecy shifted for a kid. If you're not familiar with self-fulfilling prophecy, please look it up. It's basically you become what others expect you to be. That's the simplest version. Pygmalion effect is another thing you can look up if you're interested. But the premise is if kids believe that people expect them to behave a certain way, they will. So if I'm, quote, the bad kid, if I'm, quote, the disobedient kid, if I'm, quote, the tantruming out of control kid, and everyone expects that of me, they're going to behave that way. Conversely, child-centered play therapy and a play therapist believes that the child is becoming and believes that the child is capable of self-enhancing behavior and believes that the child will self-regulate and that the child will develop an emotional vocabulary. And they do. So you as a parent have a huge opportunity to see behavior as your child's way of trying to communicate something to you. And once you're more in tune with that, you will be able to effectively communicate back in ways that are going to encourage the child to be more regulated, more in control, and all of those things. So I hope that encourages you. I hope that that is helpful. And as we go through this new season, specifically about the child-centered play therapy process, I hope that whether your kid is in therapy or not, you're seeing the value of seeing your children differently. Child-centered play therapy and its foundations, its tenets, its principles, they all come back to relationship is the most important piece. If we focus on everything that we want to be different, we damage the relationship. We basically say, I don't like you, and I'll like you if you start acting differently. We need to like and love our children regardless of their behavior. Behavior is just a manifestation of struggle. But they need to know that we truly like them. I say to my son a lot, he just turned 16, so he's not little anymore by any means. But I say to my son all the time, hey baby, I know parents love their kids, and I do love you, but I like you too. That's a really powerful message to a kid, that their parent likes them. I like my son. I like spending time with him. I like his humor. I like his personality. I like the way that he interacts with people. And I let him know that. It's really important that kids know that you believe that they are capable of good. That's a very powerful message, if nothing else. Try communicating that to your children this week. See what happens. Self-fulfilling prophecy says if kids believe that people expect them to be good, and I don't mean behave good, that they are good. Inherently, children are good. If people communicate that to them, you'll see a change. All right, I love y'all. Thanks for hanging out with me. We'll talk again soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks. For more episodes and to subscribe to our newsletter, please go to www.playtherapyparenting.com.